I live on the outskirts. My house is old, wooden, with peeling shutters and a sloping roof. I built it myself once, with love, with hope. Now it creaks like an old dog that feels that no one needs it anymore. 78 years is no joke. But I'm holding on. I heat my own water, cook my own food, and am my own boss. I don't complain. But for some reason, every day I catch myself thinking, I'm no longer a person. I'm a shadow. I'm not noticed. I'm passed over. I'm forgotten. My children, Marco and Elena, rarely drop by. They used to ask how I'm doing. Now they just say, "Dad, where's that inheritance paper?" Or, "I need to check to see if you forgot to pay your utility bill." They say this with concern in their voices, but their eyes are empty. They decided long ago that I was a burden. And granddaughter Anya. She used to hug me by the neck and laugh when I called her Flyer. Now, without looking up from the phone, she muttered, "Grandpa, these stories of yours about the war are all irrelevant now." And she left. Without pity. Without understanding. Without even a shred of respect. In the corner store, the salesman, a boy named Vlad, looks right through me. Not a single "Good day." Not a single "Thank you." Once I handed him a handful of kopecks. My pension is small, and he grimaced and said, "Next time, without this little thing." I collected the coins and left silently. My shoulders hunched. Although I didn't show it, something inside me broke. On the bench near the yard, teenagers are laughing, swearing, throwing things after me. Before I would have approached, spoke, looked into their eyes. And now, I just grip my stick and silently walk past. They don't see anything in me. And I see myself as young in them. And it hurts me. The neighbors who once invited me for tea look away. Everyone has their own business, their own worries. Old Tatiana waves her hand, but she's almost blind. Everyone else doesn't seem to notice that I'm here. The worst thing is the evenings. I sit in a room with photos from my younger years on the walls. I'm in uniform. I'm with Maria. I'm with the children on my shoulders. And I ask myself, where did that man go? Who am I now? The phone is silent. When I call, I hear in the receiver, "Dad, I'm busy." I call back. And they don't call back. It seems that life is already over, and I simply haven't had time to die yet. They all, children, grandchildren, neighbors, have already buried me within themselves. They don't see me as who I was. And I barely remember myself anymore. But one thing I know for sure, I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. And somewhere deep, very deep, something is still smoldering. I don't know what to call it. Dignity? Anger? Maybe it's the last fire before everything goes out. But I feel it. And it doesn't let me just fall. I often return to the past. Not because of weakness. Because of memory. It, like an old film, spins by itself when I just close my eyes. I was 20 when I first put on a military uniform. Not because I had to, because I believed in honor. In justice. In responsibility. I served on the border, among the mountains and fog. I commanded people. They listened to me. I knew what it was like to be needed. After the army, I didn't get lost. I returned home. I started with odd jobs on construction sites, then I opened a workshop. Long arms, callous palms, everything was done by myself. Later, a brigade, orders, my own company. They called me Master Jordan. I was the person they went to when they needed to do something. Honestly, I didn't chase money. I helped. My neighbors, the school, the hospital. I was respected, not because of how much I had, but because of who I was. And then Maria appeared. Oh, Maria! She was everything. The sun that kept me warm. Together with her, we built this house. We raised 3 children. She died early. Too early. I was left alone, and I didn't fall. I learned to cook, wash, treat. I became both a mother and a father. And they grew. And I was strong for them. I was a support. I was respected in the city, in the family, even in the village council. When I came in, they stood up. And now I come in, and the secretary doesn't even look up. She says, "Sit down, wait." And I sit. Waiting. Like a stranger. I haven't changed. Inside, the same. But everyone around, it's as if they've changed glasses. They don't see who I am anymore. Only age. Only shadow. Only burden. The worst thing, that I remember everything. I remember who I was. How I defended, how I built, how I loved. And I know that I still have strength within me. But no one sees it. And maybe that's why. I want them all to see it. I began to notice that it was becoming increasingly difficult for me to remain silent. Every little thing was like a match thrown into dry grass. And every time there was a fire inside. Invisible, but hellish. Alina, my daughter, recently said to her son, thinking that I couldn't hear her, "Dad is not the same as before. He needs to be defined somewhere. You can't just run around with him like that all your life." I was sitting in a chair next to her, behind the door. And every word was like a blow. Not to the body. To the heart. I remember when she was sick as a child, with a temperature of about 40, and I stayed up all night, applied cold compresses, and carried her in my arms to the hospital. And now to define. Like an old wardrobe that takes up space. The situation with Mark, my son, is no better. He has been talking to me for a long time now, as if he were a subordinate. Restrained, dry. Once he asked my opinion on everything from choosing a car to getting married. And now he consults with his wife. And then he simply confronts him with the fact. "Ira and I decided that it would be better if you didn't live alone. It's not comfortable at home, but we can find a boarding house. Everything is fine there, TV, food. Food. Damn it, I even cook my own borscht, and it's better than in their restaurant. But they don't see that. It's more convenient for them to think that I'm already insolvent. They want to get rid of responsibility, with comfort and a conscience covered up with words. Grandchildren. To be honest, it hurts to think about them. I once dreamed of reading books to them, taking them to the river, teaching them how to chop wood, how to hold a hammer. And they don't even listen. They laugh when I mix up the buttons on the remote control. And one day, grandson Vlad simply snatched him out of his hands. "What are you poking at there, Grandpa?" And laughed, without even looking me in the eye. In the hospital, they listened to me with such reluctance, as if I had wound their watch. "You're old," says the young doctor, without even unfolding my old X-ray. "Does it hurt? Well, it will hurt. What do you want at 78? I want respect. That's it. Not medicine, not pity, but simply to be listened to. I lose my presence. People around me pass through me as if I were smoke. And even when I approach someone, in a store, on the street, in a line, everyone is in a hurry. Their eyes are either pity or impatience. Recently, on a bus, I tried to sit next to a woman. There was an empty seat. She glanced at me and quickly leaned against the window. As if I were a threat. I, Jordan, who had never hurt a fly in my life. And once I was walking along the sidewalk, slowly, like an old man walks. Towards me was a young man with a backpack. I stopped to make way, and he, without stopping, pushed me with his shoulders so that I almost fell. And he didn't look back. He didn't even apologize. I was standing in the middle of the street then, and I felt so childishly sad that I almost cried. The old man, who had gone through war, loss, loneliness, stood there, clutching his heart from the fact that he was simply not considered a human being. I noticed how the children now consult among themselves when they arrive, maybe hire someone to look after him. What if we move him? And where are his documents? About me. With me. As if I were already dead. And I listen, look at them and remain silent. But every word they say is like a nail in the coffin lid of my dignity. I once thought that old age is wisdom. Now I see, for them it is a burden. An inconvenience. An expense. And I began to fear not death. but that they would drive me out of myself. That I myself would believe their lie, that no one needed me. As if my whole life had been a trifle. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. But something inside me is already cracking. It has cracked. And I'm not sure I can glue it back together. It was raining that day. One of those cold autumn rains when the drops tap on the hoods but don't touch the soles. I walked slowly, with a stick, as usual. I decided to go to the post office, to pick up my pension. Marco couldn't, Alina forgot. I didn't remind her. On the way back, I stopped at the entrance to the pharmacy. My legs wouldn't obey me. I sat down on a bench. 10 minutes later I realized that it would be difficult to get up. My knee was jammed, the rain had soaked my coat. People were walking by, some under an umbrella, some with coffee. I looked up and said to the young woman in the red jacket, "Excuse me. Could you help me get up?" She stopped, looked, and in her eyes I saw something resembling disgust. She curled her lips, as if from a bad smell, and replied, "Well, what am I supposed to help everyone? I'm in a hurry." And left. Without "excuse me," without "please." Just like that. If I had fallen, she would have stepped over. And so I sat, wet, humiliated, with a throbbing knee, and looked after her. Not even from anger, from emptiness. Around me dozens of people. And not one stopped. Not one. I was overcome by such silence in my head that I couldn't even hear the rain. There was only one thing. "You're gone." Not in their eyes. Not in their thoughts. Not in their world. I forced myself to get up, leaned on a stick, reached a bench under the canopy. I sat down and laughed. Quietly, empty, without joy. Because I realized, I don't belong in this world. They've already written me off. Everyone. And then something snapped inside me. Not my heart. No. The heart was still alive. But fear had died. The one that had held me back all these years. The fear of appearing old. Fear of being uncomfortable. Fear of being angry. Fear of being myself. I didn't want to put up with it anymore. I didn't want to explain, justify, beg, condescend, smile softly in response to indifference. They stopped seeing me? Okay. Now I'm going to act as if I have nothing left to lose. Because I really don't. I went home different. Something changed in my gait. In my gaze. The Jordan everyone had long forgotten had awakened in me. A commander. A strategist. A man with character. Strong, direct, dangerous. I sat down in a chair. I looked at Maria's photo. "I'm sorry," I told her quietly. "But I won't be good anymore. I won't be comfortable. I won't be weak. I'm going to make them all remember who I am. So that they'll start to fear me again, if only for a moment. So that they'll learn to respect me, or at least keep quiet when they have nothing to say." That evening, for the first time in years, I opened an old drawer. There are my notebooks, old plans, documents, records. There is me. And I decided, I will start doing something. Without shouting. Without anger. But decisively. From that moment on, I no longer just lived. I planned. For the first time in many years I felt peace. Because when you accept that the world is against you, you become free. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. There was something new in the air. Something hard, cold, like a blade. And I realized I woke up not just physically. I woke up inside. After my first coffee without sugar, as always I sat down at the table and pulled out an old notebook. I used to keep it during my service. Then in business. There were plans, diagrams, notes, faces, dates. I flipped through the pages, and it seemed to me that I was returning myself piece by piece. Memory is not just a burden. It is a weapon. And I remembered everything. I decided, I will not be brutal. I will not break. I will not take revenge like wild avengers from the movies. No. I will act differently. I will make everyone, both family and society, remember who Jordan is. Without shouting. Without threats. But with reason. I started with a simple thing. I stopped answering phone calls. Let Marco and Alina get a little excited. Let them come themselves. And when they arrived, for the first time they saw me not hunched over in a chair, but straight, in a shirt and with a clear gaze. Dad, what happened? Why didn't you answer? I decided that a little silence would be good. You know, I said calmly, I finally started listening to myself. And it turns out I have something to say. Not to you. To myself. And from that day on, I kept a diary every night. At first, it was anger. Memories of insults. Of indifference. Of small daily humiliations. I wrote down everything. How Vlad spoke to me condescendingly in the store. How the doctor simply left the office while I was still talking. How my granddaughter walked past without even glancing in my direction. But every day my diary changed. I began to remember, not only the bad, but also my own. Strong. I listed the skills I had, how to build, how to lead people, how to negotiate. How to make people respect me without force. And then an idea came to me. I started helping. But not just anyone. But those who never asked. An old neighbor who could barely make it to the pharmacy. A single mother who was ashamed of her poverty. I repaired, carried, solved problems. Not for the sake of fame, for the sake of justice. And everyone who received my help looked at me no longer as an old man, but as a man. A person. Ants ran down my back when a young nurse in the hospital quietly said, "You, Mr. Jordan, are different. You are alive." And my children? They started asking, "What's wrong with you? You are different. Have you planned something again?" And I just smiled. And didn't explain anything. I deliberately began to return respect not with words, but with actions. My old acquaintances with lawyers, with entrepreneurs, with the editor of the local newspaper, everything came back into play. I organized a small initiative for the elderly. Simple things: someone would bring medicine, someone would repair the faucet. But it was done with dignity. Without pity. Without a hint of charity. And I was its face. They began to recognize me again. Invite me to meetings. Ask questions. Listen. I didn't take revenge on my children. I simply changed the context. When they talked about a nursing home again, I looked them in the eye and said, "I will decide for myself where and how I live. And it's not for you to decide. You don't have enough experience yet to teach me." And they remained silent. Because they knew I was right. My diary now has a different name. At first I called it Revenge. But later I renamed it. Now it is called Return. Because I have really returned. And now I am no longer a shadow. Do you know what has changed the most? Not even the attitude towards me, but my own attitude towards myself. I no longer wake up feeling like I have to apologize for my existence. I no longer look around, looking for a look of approval. Now I simply am. And that is enough. When I walk down the street, people recognize me. They nod their heads in greeting. Some stop to talk. The young salesman Vlad, yes, the same one who didn't accept a penny now, doesn't just say hello. He remembers that I take unleavened bread and asks how I am. Not because he was forced to. Because he sees me. For him, I am a man again, not a grandfather. The children have changed. Not quickly. But they have changed. Marco no longer speaks to me as if I were a subordinate. He now consults. Listens. He looks at me with curiosity, even with a little apprehension, as if he sees in me again who I used to be. And Alina, she said quietly once, when she and her granddaughter left my house, "You put us all in our place. And I guess you did the right thing." Granddaughter Anya one day left her phone in the kitchen and asked, "Grandpa, can you tell me more about the service where you were a commander?" I silently poured her tea. And I started. Without anger. Without pretense. I just talked. And for the first time in many years, they listened to me. My diary is almost finished. It's not just notes. It's my journey. From resentment to confidence. from silence to voice, from invisibility to presence. I left a few pages for last. For thoughts. For those words that I want to say, even if I'm gone. And there I wrote the most important thing: old age is not age. It's how you are perceived. And how you allow yourself to be perceived. If you let yourself be written off, you're no longer alive. You're a shadow. And if you stand up and say, "I'm still here," then the world is forced to stop and look. I've learned not to ask for respect, but to be it. To be worthy is not through a voice, but through a silence that speaks louder than a scream. I no longer try to bring back the past. It was. I'm grateful. But now, I have something more. I am myself. And my right to be. And do you know what phrase I'll leave on the last page? The one I repeat to myself every morning when I look in the mirror. As long as I breathe, I can't be broken. And let this world continue to hurry, laugh, run away, I'm no longer afraid. Because I am Jordan. And I exist again.
Subscribe and like, and send the video to your friends.